Welcome to The Dark Docket, the podcast where we unravel history's most intriguing legal cases involving the supernatural and the paranormal. I'm your host, Aiden. I'm just getting over COVID at the moment, so apologies if my voice doesn't sound like previous episodes. But today, we're delving into the chilling tale of the Hammersmith Ghost murder case from 1804. This case not only captivated London's imagination, but also set a significant legal precedent that would echo through the centuries. Before we turn to the matter at hand, I need to share an important disclaimer. Nothing you hear on this show should be construed as legal advice. If you're facing a legal issue, please consult with a qualified attorney duly licensed in the appropriate state. Furthermore, while we strive for accuracy, the primary purpose of this show is entertainment. As such, we can't guarantee the complete historical accuracy of all facts and stories presented. Some details may be dramatized or simplified for narrative effect. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. But remember, we're here to spark your imagination, not to solve your ghostly legal disputes. Our story begins in the winter of 1803 in the quiet London suburb of Hammersmith. As the nights grew longer, whispers of a terrifying apparition began to spread through the community. The fog rolled in thick, shrouding the streets in an impenetrable mist. The only sounds were the distant tolling of the church bell and the occasional rustle of leaves in the cold wind. It was in this chilling silence that the ghost would reportedly appear near St. Paul's churchyard as soon as the church bell struck 1 o'clock in the morning. One night, a wagon driver was traveling through Hammersmith, and he saw a spectral figure so terrifying that he fled on foot, leaving the wagon, the 8 horses pulling it, and 16 passengers behind. Witnesses described a tall figure dressed in white, believed to be the restless spirit of a man who had committed suicide by slashing his own throat the previous year. The contemporary belief was that suicide was a grievous sin, and a crime at least until the 1961 Suicide Act. Hence, suicide victims were not allowed to be buried in consecrated ground or given full Christian funeral rites. Their souls would be relegated to spending eternity as spirits who would walk the earth, never to find peace. Interestingly, it wasn't until 2017 that the Church of England lifted its ban on suicide victims receiving full funeral rites. The ghost's appearances soon escalated from sightings to alleged attacks. 2 women on separate occasions, one elderly and the other pregnant, reportedly died from shock after encounters with the spirit. The pregnant woman, before she passed, described a tall white figure rising from the tombstones of the churchyard and grabbing her, causing her to faint. She was discovered hours later and passed away after giving her account. A brewer's servant named Thomas Groom testified to a frightening experience in the churchyard as well, claiming something rose from behind a tombstone and seized him by the throat. The last reported sighting of the ghost occurred on December 29, 1803, when a night watchman, William Girdler, encountered the apparition along Beaver Lane. He attempted to pursue it, but the ghost evaded capture by shedding its white shroud and vanishing into the night. Hammersmith was gripped by fear. With no organized police force in London at the time, local citizens took matters into their own hands. Armed patrols roamed the streets, determined to capture the spirit. On the night of January 3, 1804, a 29-year-old excise officer, or tax official, named Francis Smith, had grown frustrated with the lack of success of the neighborhood watch groups. Smith, armed with a shotgun and fortified by Dutch courage, aka gin, set out alone to confront the ghost. As fate would have it, on that gloomy night, Smith encountered a figure in white near the junction of Black Lion Lane and Beaver Lane. Visibility at the junction was poor due to the lack of lighting and fog. Imagine walking through the foggy streets of Hammersmith at night, the cold air biting at your skin, and suddenly seeing a tall, white figure emerging from the shadows. What would you do? Would you run? Or would you stand your ground? Or would you freeze, convinced that what you were seeing was a ghost? Smith, convinced he was facing the ghost, called out,
"Damn you, who are you? What are you? Damn you, I will shoot you!"
The figure continued to advance toward Smith, who raised his gun and fired. This was no ghost. Thomas Millwood, a 22-year-old bricklayer, dressed in the white clothes of his trade, lay dead in the dark street. Millwood was most likely startled or confused by Smith's warnings and threats, or may not have heard him properly. The coroner ruled that Millwood died from a single gunshot wound that went through his mouth and exited out of the back of his neck. Thomas Millwood, an innocent man, was a victim of fear and mistaken identity. Francis Smith was arrested and charged with murder. Smith was reportedly upset but cooperative during his arrest. The trial, held at the Old Bailey, became a sensation, capturing the public's imagination and raising complex legal questions. During the trial, Smith exhibited significant shame and remorse. He was so overcome that he could not stand without assistance and struggled to articulate his defense. And not without good reason. The prosecution's case was damning. Millwood's widow testified that she had previously warned her husband about wearing white work clothes at night, as he had already been mistaken for the ghost at least once before. Millwood's sister also provided crucial testimony. She was near the scene just prior to the shooting, as she was looking for her brother to warn him about the vigilantes hunting the ghost. She was close enough to hear Smith call out a warning and then fire his gun almost immediately, giving Millwood no chance to identify himself. An interesting side note, a few days after Millwood's death, John Graham, a local cobbler, confessed to dressing up as the ghost on at least one occasion. He donned a white sheet so he could scare some apprentices of his. Graham was looking for revenge because his apprentices had frightened his children by telling them ghost stories. Despite numerous character witnesses attesting to Smith's good character, the case against him was overwhelming. The presiding judge, Lord Chief Baron Sir Archibald MacDonald, instructed the jury that the defendant had no right to conclude that a man dressed in white was a ghost, and that firing the gun was a rash act not excused by the law. Lord MacDonald delivered a pivotal instruction to the jury: "I should betray my duty and injure the public security if I did not persist in asserting that this is a clear case of murder, if the facts be proved to your satisfaction. All killing, whatever, amounts to murder, unless justified by the law or in self-defense. In cases of some involuntary acts, or some sufficiently violent provocation, it becomes manslaughter. Not one of these circumstances occur here." This instruction was crucial. It established that malice was not required for a murder conviction, merely an intent to kill. The judge emphasized that Smith had neither acted in self-defense nor faced any provocation that might reduce the charge to manslaughter. The jury found Francis Smith guilty of murder, and he was sentenced to death. However, the story didn't end there. Public opinion swayed in Smith's favor, and a stay of execution was obtained. A few weeks later, Smith received a royal pardon from King George III on the condition that he serve 1 year of hard labor. This outcome reflected the complexity of the case and the public's conflicted feelings about Smith's actions. While the law demanded punishment, many felt that Smith had acted out of genuine, although misinformed, concern for public safety. Furthermore, the trial did not mark the end for the Hammersmith Ghost. New reports of the spirit arose in 1824, and this time it was said to have gained the ability to breathe fire. The ghost sightings continued until Spring-Heeled Jack took its place in the public consciousness in the late 1830s. The Hammersmith Ghost murder case left a lasting impact on British law. It raised important questions about self-defense and mistaken belief that would not be fully resolved for nearly 2 centuries. It wasn't until 1983 that a court decision finally established clearer guidelines for cases involving mistaken belief and self-defense. R.V. Williams, Gladstone, involved the defendant intervening in what he believed was an assault on a youth. The victim was actually detaining the youth for a mugging, but the defendant mistakenly thought the youth was being attacked. At the original trial, the jury was instructed that mistake could only be a defense if the mistake was reasonable. Based on this instruction, they found the defendant guilty. On appeal, Lord Lane delivered the landmark judgment, stating, "The reasonableness or unreasonableness of the defendant's belief is material to the question of whether the belief was held by the defendant at all. If the belief was in fact held, its unreasonableness, so far as guilt or innocence is concerned, is neither here nor there. It is irrelevant." The 1983 ruling effectively established that the key factor in such cases is whether the defendant genuinely held the belief that they had to act in self-defense, not whether the belief was reasonable. It shifted the focus from the objective reasonableness of a belief to the subjective sincerity of that belief. In U.S. law, the justification for self-defense leans more towards the reasonable person standard. This standard evaluates whether an average person in the same situation would have felt imminently threatened even if the perceived threat wasn't real. Some states also recognize imperfect self-defense, when a person genuinely but unreasonably fears imminent harm, and this can potentially reduce the charges or penalties defendants face. The Hammersmith Ghost murder case serves as a chilling reminder of how fear and superstition can lead to tragic consequences. Moreover, it points to the possibility that our fears and superstitions not only serve as easy answers when we're confronted by the unknown, but also how they can serve as reflections of larger social concerns. For example, collective guilt over the treatment of suicide victims and others who were neglected by the church. It also highlights the delicate balance between public safety and individual rights, and the challenges faced by the legal system when dealing with extraordinary circumstances. As we reflect on this case, we're reminded that sometimes the most haunting stories are those grounded in reality, where human fear and misunderstanding collide. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the past, and be sure to join us next time on the Dark Docket as we unravel another chilling case from the annals of legal history. Please remember to like and subscribe on whatever venue you tune in on. Also, if you have any topics or cases you would like to hear us cover, feel free to write to us at darkdocket@gmail.com. Until next time, remember, beliefs can't be shot down. Only the truth can put a superstition to its final rest.